running, never bothered about what could be coming. Every day we danced and life was smiling. We were young and drunk in love.
Hey babes, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by, especially if you're new around here. I'm so glad that you decided to click on this video. I just wanted to share with you guys a special DIY of how to make your own nursery signs on a budget. I fell absolutely in love with all of these nursery signs on Etsy, but unfortunately they cost like $100 each, and I'm having twins, so that was really not in the budget for us this time around, and I had to figure out a way to still get my dream signs without having to spend that much money. So I decided to hop over on Amazon, order a couple of things, use some stuff around my house, and utilize the tools that I have at home, like my Cricut Joy, and figure out a way to make it work. So I'm going to take you guys along with me and show you everything that I did to make these signs, and I hope that you really enjoy this video. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button if you like it, and make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. Thanks guys. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I did was I ordered on Amazon these 2 round pieces of wood. I will let you guys know I ordered thin ones without really thinking about attaching them to the wall later. So I would suggest ordering slightly thicker pieces of wood if you can, or you can find out what my hack was at the end of this and see if you want to just order the thin ones and go with my hack as well. So I had some plastic gloves and a mask just to protect myself from the polyurethane that I was using to stain with. This is just one that I had around the house that we used to stain our stairs a few years back. I have a flathead screwdriver that's just to open up the paint can, and I have a couple of pieces of fabric. These are just old cotton shirts of my husband's that I cut up, and we use those rather than using paintbrushes because I prefer the way that it looks when you use a cotton t-shirt to stain with. And of course, with any good project, you have to have good tunes. So I decided on classic oldies to listen to today, but whatever tunes you're into, make sure that you get them started up on your phone or your radio and get ready to start staining.
I'm not heading for the stars, driving down this boulevard tonight. Yeah, playing Coldplay on repeat, watching people on the street as I go by. Now my wheels in motion and my windows open with the wind.
And as you can see here, I'm just taking what's left on the rag and wiping it around the edges, just to make sure that all of the parts that are going to be seen have stain on them.
Here I go.
Now I loved how it looked with just one coat of stain, so I just left it outside to dry. But if you wanted to do a second coat, you totally can. Just make sure that you give it a good amount of time to dry in between and follow the instructions on the back of the paint can. And the next step was designing how I wanted them to look. I just made an 18-inch circle on my Cricut template and then found the fonts that I liked and played around with it until I found something that I thought looked really good. For this, I used my Cricut Joy. You can use any kind of cutting machine that you have, or if you don't have one, you can also order wooden letters on Amazon, or you could use sticker letters, or even just freehand paint them on yourself. So now you're going to want to cut some pieces of your stencil vinyl to the size of your Cricut mat, and you're going to want to make sure that you put them on upside down so that the white side is showing, not the graph side. you're also going to want to make sure that you cut in mirror. So before you go to basically hitting cut at the very end, there's a selection where you can toggle it for mirror, and that is what you're going to want to do so that it basically cuts it a mirror image. Now, just be careful when you are peeling it up. Remember that you are doing a stencil, so you need not the part that's the actual letters, but the outline of the letters, which means you're also going to want to have any of those centerpieces, like I'm peeling up this little triangle from the A, because those are going to be really important to make sure that you can paint inside your stencils. I'm also just showing you how the blue part is the sticky part. That is the stencil part, not the white. The white is just the backing. And for any letters that you're using that are script, like I am for the middle name, you want to make sure that you weld those letters together before you cut them out. Otherwise, you're going to have little cut marks between each letter. And just like before, you want to make sure that you don't miss all of those little in-between pieces, like for the script letters between the L's, the O's, and little loops of the W's. And now it's time for us to put our stencil onto our wooden boards. So for me using the Cricut Joy, I had to cut my letters in little groups of 3 just because I didn't have a large enough mat to cut them as all one giant word. So I'm going to have to make sure that I can line it up pretty well. I did a pretty good job. It's not perfect, but if you have a larger mat or a larger Cricut, you won't have to worry about this as much. Now, if you're thinking, wouldn't it be easier to use transfer tape? You would be incorrect, because I actually did try using transfer tape on the other one of these that I made, and it actually made things a lot more difficult when I was trying to get the vinyl off of the transfer tape and onto the wood. So I think just freehanding the vinyl on is easier than using transfer tape. And you just want to make sure that after you get all of your stencils on, that you really smooth them on using some sort of tool to try and make sure you get them stuck really well to the wood so that you won't get bleeding when you put the paint on a little bit later. So I'm taking a very thin flat paintbrush, and I am using just a paint sample that I had already had around the house, but you can easily pick them up for a few bucks from a hardware store. And I am painting in all of the uppercase letters of Mackenzie. I am doing in this sort of creamish white color, and then I just used some of my daughter's play paint to tint the rest of the paint to give it a little bit of a greenish color, and that is what I am using for the script letters for the middle name. What have I made? We join forces today. Oh no, half isn't enough. Let's build castles now. Well, you know what they say. There are no kingdoms without rulers. Now I choose to not really let the paint dry completely before I take the stencils off. That's really kind of just the way that I like to do it. That way, if there are any little mistakes, I can kind of clean them up before the paint is dry. As you'll see here, I'm sort of scraping out a couple little areas where the paint did bleed underneath the stencil, and it's just so much easier to do that when the paint is still a little bit wet. Now I have let the paint dry at this point, and I'm just going to do a top coat of Mod Podge. I picked a kind of more of a sheen look to it. You can do more of a matte look if you prefer, or you don't have to do a top coat at all if you don't want to. But I really, really love the way that this ended up turning out. Okay, so now it's time to mount them to the wall. I am just using simple frame mounts that you can get at the hardware store or the craft store. And what I was saying before with them being really, really thin is that once we were getting the screws all the way through, we realized that the screws were going to be too long and they were going to poke through out the other side. So we decided to just go for it. We put them through, and then we snipped off the ends with a wire cutter to make them a little bit shorter, and then decided that we were going to put a flower on Mackenzie's and some leaves on Miles to cover those spots up. So I ended up using a dab of hot glue over each of the screw ends to make sure that they weren't sharp, and then hot glued on these simple fabric, flower, and leaves to kind of give it a cute look, and I love the way that it turned out. I'm glad that we ended up doing it this way because I think it turned out so much better than just having the names alone.
Do you ever feel you don't get out what you're putting in? All your hopes and efforts are all in vain. Who will pick you up when you've lost everything? Does it all become for granted with a wedding ring? Oh, there must be more. There must be another way. There must be conscience. Different things in different ways. There must be love. There must be a reason, and a little bit of faith has got to come my way.
I hope that you guys liked this DIY. I hope that it helps you guys save a few dollars, and I will have all of the things that you need for it linked down below in my description box. Thanks again so much for joining. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and that like button on your way out today. Love ya. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.